Hey, this is Andy here with Libertarian Revolution, and today I want to talk to you about a trip I took recently, which should be pretty apparent from my recent videos, and that was to Acapulco, Mexico for the 2018 Anarchapulco conference. Now, I have been following Anarchapulco online since it started. It started in, what year was that, 2015? Or was it 2014? 2014, I guess. And I've always wanted to go and never made it. And I often don't get to go to a lot of these events. You know, I've never been to Pork Fest. I haven't been to the New Hampshire Liberty Forum. I went to Freedom Fest in Las Vegas once, and I've been to some Libertarian Party conventions. I've been to, I guess, 6 Libertarian National Conventions. Let me see, I was at Anaheim in 2000, and then I was at Denver in 2008, St. Louis in 2010, Las Vegas in 2012, Columbus in 2014, and Orlando in 2016. But a lot of these events, you know, I don't get a chance to go to. I hear about, you know, different liberty events happening around the country, and I usually can't make it because I'm usually busy. I'm busy working, and, you know, it costs money to go to these things. And, you know, sometimes I don't have the resources, or it's not the most prudent use of my resources. But anyway, I'd never been to Mexico before either. And so I've been by the Mexican border in California and Arizona and Texas. I've seen Mexico, but I'd never actually been there. And in fact, I hadn't even been out of the country, the U.S., since the 1980s. I took a trip to England with my family. We went there on a vacation, and we went to England, and we landed in Ireland. I was in Ireland at an airport for about an hour, but you know, I never left the airport. I guess I did get to see some Irish people in the airport, and I remember my parents gave me some money, and I bought some Irish cookies, but didn't really get to do much in Ireland, obviously, because I never left the airport. But I was in England for about a week, maybe a week and a half, something like that. And then when we flew back to the U.S., we actually flew to Germany to fly back to the U.S., but my father was in the military, and they had this thing in the military called, and I'm not going to get into the whole libertarian discussion about the military, save that for another video. But anyway, they had this thing in the military where you could fly on a cargo plane, and it was pretty cheap. And when we flew over to England, we actually flew over on a C-130. No, it wasn't a C-130. It was actually, I can't remember what the hell you called it. Yeah, it was a C-130. And where they had the web seating, you know, like you see in the movies where the guys jump out of the back of an airplane. Then we flew over to Germany, and we spent the day on an American military base. So it was just like being in the USA. And so, you know, I don't even really count that as having been in Germany, because I never saw anything German except out of the window of the airplane. So we spent a day in Germany waiting on an American military base, waiting to catch a flight back to the US. And we flew back on a C-5 Galaxy, which is a huge cargo plane. And at the top of it, you went up a flight of stairs, and at the top of it, it was like a regular airline. But below that, they had all these military supplies. And yeah, I don't think the military should be going all over the world and all that stuff. I'm against the imperialism. But that's another discussion for another time. Okay, so anyway, fast forward back to the present. That was the last time I was out of the country, okay? So I've been to Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico is U.S. territory. I've seen Canada. I've been up to the Canadian border, from Niagara Falls, but I never crossed Niagara Falls, so I was not in Canada. I've flown over Canada, but I've never actually set foot in Canada. So anyway, I hadn't been out of the country in a long time, and I've been wanting to do some traveling, so I just said, the heck with it. I'm definitely going to go to Anarchapulco 2018. Anyway, I had some financial ups and downs throughout the year, but things were looking good enough for me to go. Then I unfortunately had some setbacks financially and almost canceled the trip. But I decided, well, the hell with it. I'm not going to let any setbacks hold me back this time. I don't like to spend life just sitting on the sidelines. Like I want to actually go out and do something. I'd like to see another country. And, they had a really good speaker list in Anarchapulco. There were, Ron Paul was there. Of course, Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, G. Edward Griffin, Mark Passio, Larkin Rose, Adam Kokesh, and lots of other interesting speakers. So anyway, I decided to go. And anyway, it was a pretty cool trip. I got to see a lot of interesting things. I got to walk around in Mexico. And one thing that I thought was kind of funny was, I don't know, maybe a block or two away from where the hotel was, there was a shopping center. And the shopping center had a freaking Walmart in it. So that was kind of funny, walking around in a Walmart in Mexico. Now, the Walmart was attached to a mall, and there were some stores in there that looked familiar, but of course, I guess there were some Mexican stores in there as well, and they had a food court, and I ate at a mall food court in Mexico, and then there was a Home Depot there, and then on the other side of the street, there was a Mexican grocery store, and there was a mall attached to that as well. And I walked around in that mall, and but anyway, in the mall where the Walmart was, there was a McDonald's, and I don't really like eating at McDonald's very often in the U.S., and so I'm in Mexico, and I certainly didn't want to eat at a McDonald's in Mexico either. So there was a place in the parking lot that kind of looked like Denny's, but it wasn't Denny's. I think it was called Vips or something like that. I guess it was some kind of Mexican chain that's similar to Denny's. And I went in there to have something to eat, and I think at the time I didn't have any pesos. So I speak muy pequeño español, very little Spanish. So I know a little bit of Spanish, but certainly not enough to carry on a conversation. But I was eating there by myself, and I ended up, for a time now there were some other Anarchapulco people that popped up in the restaurant later, but when I was sitting there ordering, like, I was the only non-Mexican in the restaurant. And so that was kind of fun, trying to order food. And, I had to point at the menu, and, like, I wanted something to drink. So I'm like, agua. I know agua means water. And now I have heard from other people that people in a lot of countries don't put ice in their water. I happen to like ice in my water, so I was trying to get the guy to put some ice in, but I didn't know how to say ice in Spanish. And I ended up pointing at the ice container. And the guy went and got me some ice, but he didn't get me that many ice cubes. And then I just said, well, the heck with it. But anyway, I pointed at the menu, what I wanted. I got some food, and then it came time to pay. And I had dollars, U.S. dollars on me, and I didn't know what the conversion rate was. I ended up paying with a credit card. They did accept American credit cards there. And then I left the guy a tip in dollars. I assume he had some mechanism for converting those to pesos. So anyway, this place was walking distance from where the hotel was. The hotel was very nice, and I'll tell you, if this hotel was in the U.S., it would be extremely expensive. I probably wouldn't even be able to afford to stay there if it was in the U.S. But in Mexico, it's cheaper. And it was a very nice hotel. It wasn't the best hotel I've ever stayed at, but it was very nice. And the lobby was pretty amazing for the hotel. It was a very beautiful lobby, open air. They had fountains and sometimes like birds, or you'd see like a flamingo or something, or a peacock in the lobby. And anyway, it was they had these restaurants that were kind of outdoor. There was a bar that was outdoor. And they had like really, really cool swimming pools. There were like 5 swimming pools at the hotel, and it's right on the beach. And like you could go out in your balcony and overlook the pools and the ocean and all that stuff. And the beach there was just awesome. I made sure to go swimming, every day in the ocean, and I was body surfing. And they did have surfboards that you could rent. Unfortunately, I never did that. They also had jet skis that you could rent, and I wanted to do that, and I unfortunately didn't do that either. So anyway, now the speaker lineup at Anarchapulco was pretty awesome. They had a lot of amazing speakers there. Like I said before, there was Ron Paul, there was G. Edward Griffin, there was Mark Passio, Larkin Rose. Larkin Rose had a debate with Lauren Southern, and I'll probably make another video about that later. And it was just a pretty cool lineup of speakers. Roger Ver, the Bitcoin Jesus, was there, and Vít Jedlička, the president of Libertarian. And I mean, it was kind of almost like a who's who in the Liberty movement. And of course, cryptocurrency was a big topic of discussion there. And they had a day called Cryptopolco, and then there was a day on the Dollar Vigilante investment seminar, and there was really interesting speakers there. And anyway, I got to meet some really cool, interesting people. Some of the well-known, interesting people I got to meet were Vít Jedlička, the president of Liberland. I got to meet the Bitcoin Jesus, Roger Ver, who I interviewed, which is on this channel. I got to meet That Guy T, a.k.a. Talib Brown. And by the way, Roger Ver seems like a really great guy, and That Guy T is an awesome guy, great guy. I got to talk to him for quite a long time. Really great guy. Highly recommend his YouTube channel, That Guy T, aka Talib Brown. Check him out on YouTube. He's got some really good videos. I also got to talk to Adam Kokesh again, and I've met Adam Kokesh several times, but I got to meet him again at Anarchapulco. And Cynthia McKinney, who I also, and I interviewed both Adam Kokesh and Cynthia McKinney together. Kind of funny story, when I went to meet up with Adam Kokesh, he had told me that he was having a poker game, and a friend of mine that I had recruited to come down there with me likes to play poker. And so Adam Kokesh had said he was having the poker game on a certain night, and so anyway, he was not staying at the venue. He was staying at an Airbnb that was several blocks away from the venue, and it was on a street that was like unmarked. And so anyway, I had like a picture of what the how to get to his place, and I had to show it to a cab driver. And so we drove out there. We weren't sure which building he was in. So like the first building we went to, like nobody was there. Then I went to another building and I knocked on the door, and some Mexican woman answered the door and didn't speak English. And so we were about to give up, and I looked at this other building and I saw a light on at the on the top floor. It was like a 3-story building. And I was like, okay, well, if this isn't it, we're just going to give up and go back to the hotel. So anyway, I went up there, knocked on the door, and yeah, it was Adam Kokesh's place, and he had some people there, and walked in. Anyway, I saw this woman there, and I was like, I've seen this woman somewhere before. Who the heck is she? And then I realized, oh, that's Cynthia McKinney. So I had actually met Cynthia McKinney on a couple of occasions. I saw her speak in Los Angeles years ago. As I mentioned in the interview I did with them that's on the channel, she was, I believe she was an opening speaker for Mike Rupert, and they were speaking at this church in downtown Los Angeles. The church was just being used as a venue for the event. It wasn't, what they were doing had no connection to the church. Anyway, and then I also met Cynthia McKinney at the Green Party National Convention in Chicago, Illinois, in 2008. That's when she won the nomination. Now, I've never been a member of the Green Party, but somebody I know was there covering it. And myself and another guy, we went there and hung out, and we were picking up this person, and then the three of us were taking a trip somewhere after that. So anyway, I hung out at the Green Party convention for, I was there for, maybe 2 or 3 hours or something like that. And I talked to Cynthia McKinney after she won the presidential nomination, and I congratulated her. And I'll tell you this, Cynthia McKinney is saying that, she's becoming a libertarian or an anarchist now, which is pretty cool. And I think for, she was always kind of a freedom leaning Democrat. Now, I'm not sure how libertarian she is now. I mean, she said in Anarchapulco, I believe her quote was, "I think I'm becoming an anarchist," or "I think I'm an anarchist now." So be curious to see what happens with that, and just how far, down the anarcho-capitalist rabbit hole she goes. But she's a very nice lady, by the way. Really, she's got a really great personality. I have a very positive impression of her. Anyway, other interesting people I got to meet there. I got to meet Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live. I've been a periodic listener. I don't listen to Free Talk Live all the time, but I listen sometimes, and I've kind of been aware of them for a long time, and every once in a while I go through stretches where I listen, and sometimes I don't listen, and sometimes I listen. But I've called into Free Talk Live, and I've actually talked to Ian on the air, and so I actually got to meet him in person. I actually had met Mark Edge, his main co-host, at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. That was back in 2013. But anyway, I spoke to Ian Freeman. Who else did I meet when I was there? Oh, I got to meet Lauren Southern. And that was really cool because, I really like Lauren Southern's videos. I think Lauren Southern is just really awesome independent journalist. And, she was very nice, by the way. And I wish I could have talked to her longer than I did. I got to talk to her for a few minutes. And then I had asked her about doing an interview, and she said she would do it. I'll tell you one thing that kind of held me back for interviews. I would have had more interviews if I had a microphone. I just have a handheld camera, and unfortunately, there was an area in front of the main conference hall, and a lot of people would hang out there. And they had, there were different people had different tables set up. And they were promoting various things, cryptocurrencies or whatever. They had Free Talk Live was broadcasting there, and there was people getting, there was like a bar was set up, and they had tables with water. Anyway, people would hang out there in between going in and out of the conference hall, and sometimes it would get pretty noisy out there, and so. It was that made it more difficult for me to conduct interviews because I didn't have a microphone, and other people there that were doing interviews had better equipment than I did. And so if I would have had better equipment, I could have gotten more interviews, because basically I needed to get the people I was interviewing in a more quiet setting, or else you wouldn't have been able to hear them. But anyway, Lauren Southern, really nice, really cool. And I had asked her about doing an interview. She said she was going to do it, but she was busy at the time. And then the times I saw her after that were just kind of in passing. I talked to her like maybe 2 or 3 other times in passing. She wasn't there as long as I thought. I think she was only there for about 2.5 days. And I guess I met her on Thursday. Then I talked to her again on Friday. And then I didn't know this, but apparently she flew out Saturday morning. So I didn't find this out until Saturday night when I ran into Jeff Berwick. And I had asked Jeff Berwick about doing an interview. And Berwick had said he would do it, but I had to catch him at a good time. And so I saw him Saturday night as the main conference was kind of pouring out. There weren't that many people around, and that's when I got him. And then when I finished interviewing him, I asked him if he knew where Lauren Southern was, and she told me that she had flown out that morning. So I was like, darn, missed it. Oh well, maybe some other time. But anyway, it was also that same evening that I interviewed Roger Ver, the Bitcoin Jesus. I had ran into him prior to that, and I'd asked him about doing an interview, but he was busy, and I ended up catching him in this. There was this big courtyard on one side of the building where you could see the beach. It was kind of like where you walked out of the main convention hall, and there was this big overhang, and that's where a lot of people were hanging out, in between speakers and stuff like that. And then you stepped out of the overhang area and you walked down into this big courtyard. And then if you kept walking in the big courtyard, you turned, and then there was more of the courtyard, and then you could see the ocean. So that's where I ran into Roger Ver, was that area, part of the courtyard that was kind of closer to the ocean. Anyway, there was a Ron Paul banquet on Friday night. I really wanted to talk to Ron Paul, and unfortunately didn't get a chance. I know he was added. He was one of the last speakers that they added, and I had heard that Ron Paul stayed at a different hotel. Some of the speakers were staying at the same hotel as where the convention was being held, but some of them were staying at different venues. Now, why were they at different venues? Was it because they didn't want to be mobbed by people trying to talk to them, or what? I don't know, but whatever. For whatever reason, some of the speakers were at different hotels than where the convention was being held, and I can certainly understand. I'm sure that there were like 1,700 people there, and I'm sure everybody there would have liked to have talked to Ron Paul. And, he's an older guy, and, it's just not realistic for him to talk to everybody that's there. So unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk to Ron Paul. I did meet Ron Paul back in 2008 in Pennsylvania. In fact, I actually kind of had dinner with him. I say kind of had dinner with him because I was technically sitting at the table next to the table he was at. But I did talk to him at the dinner, and he was giving a speech in State College, Pennsylvania at Penn State University, and I was actually there petitioning for the Libertarian Party. Actually got a lot of signatures at that speech. And anyway, after it was over, he was signing autographs and having pictures taken with people, and I went up and I talked to him, and I got my picture taken with him. And then there was a dinner with the Penn State Libertarians after that, and I went to the dinner, and like I said, I was at the table next to the table that Ron Paul was at, but I did talk to him briefly. That was back in 2008. Wow, that was 10 years ago now. So I don't even know if he would remember me. I actually worked on his campaign in 2008 and in 2012, getting him and his delegates on the ballot in different states. And in fact, I actually played a pretty big role in getting 4 Ron Paul delegates elected in Pennsylvania. There was a district that I heavily canvassed myself and another guy, and we were giving out, they had these things called Ron Paul Slim Jim cards, and we were giving out these Ron Paul Slim Jim cards to just about every house we went to, and including the people that weren't home. And if people were home and they acted like they were interested, we were giving them a card and telling them to check out the website. And then after that was over, I was actually got a bunch of delegate cards, and I was handing out delegate cards for Ron Paul delegates from this area. And I was actually at a gun show in Pennsylvania. Not during this time period, and when I was at the gun show, anyone I encountered that was from this congressional district, I was giving them delegate cards and telling them, these are the delegates you need to vote for, who are the most serious about protecting your gun rights. And anyway, that resulted in 4 Ron Paul delegates being elected in this district. But anyway, I was hoping to talk to Ron Paul. They had a microphone set up where you could ask questions to some of the speakers, and I thought about going up to the microphone before Ron Paul was finished speaking so I could ask a question, and unfortunately I didn't do it. Now I kind of regret that. And then as soon as he was done speaking, boom, there was really quickly a line formed at the microphone, and unless you were one of the first few people in line, there was no chance you were going to get to talk to him, because they didn't have a chance for everybody there that wanted to ask a question. So anyway, I kind of blew my opportunity on that one. Now, I did get up a couple other times. I got up after the Larkin Rose, Lauren Southern debate, and I'm probably going to make another video about that. And I guess I was a little bit too long-winded. Go figure. With my kind of, I was making a statement and then turning it into a question, and unfortunately, they basically said, "Hey, you got to, you're taking too much time. You got to get off the microphone." So I had to then cut it short before I felt like I'd done a good job making my point. But surprisingly, I actually had a few people come up to me after that and said they agreed with what I said. I probably could have done a better job saying it, but anyway, whatever. I was actually kind of surprised that, that I had people coming up to me and, afterwards and saying that they agreed with me. Now, not everybody, but I'm just saying I had some people that did. But anyway, I got up also at the Vít Jedlička. I got up and I was able to ask him a question. And I also talked to Vít Jedlička, the president of Libertarian, in that area where the overhang was outside of the main conference hall. And like I said, I tried to get an interview with him, but it was too loud and just didn't work out. Oh, I also talked to Ben Swan. I've met Ben Swan before. He was a speaker at the Libertarian National Convention in Columbus, Ohio in 2014. So this was the second time I met Ben Swan. I kind of joked with him and said, hey, you kind of disappeared for a while. And there was a rumor going around that the Illuminati had you killed because you were talking about Pizzagate. And he's probably heard that one before. But anyway, Ben Swan, really great guy, awesome guy. I tried to get an interview with him as well, but it was too loud. And he didn't stay. Most of the speakers that were at Anarchapulco, I think they were there for like a whole week. I know some of them actually stayed for a couple weeks, but there were a few speakers that didn't stay there very long. Like I said, Lauren Southern was only there for, I believe, like maybe 2.5 days or something, and Ben Swan wasn't there very long either. He was only there for like maybe like 2 days or something. But anyway, they had a banquet Friday night where Ron Paul was the keynote speaker. I was thinking about going to the banquet, but I decided not to go because it was $140 for the ticket, and because I had unfortunately I'd taken some economic losses before the conference happened. Several things went wrong for me, and I lost some money, and almost canceled the trip. I decided to not go to the banquet because I didn't want to spend the $140. But apparently all the speakers who were there were at the banquet. But like I said, I didn't go. Maybe next time. I'm hearing that Ron Paul is actually going to be there again for Anarchapulco 2019. So maybe I'll do that next time. But anyway, other interesting speakers they had there or other people I got to talk to. Let me see, who else did I talk to that I haven't mentioned yet? I really wanted to talk to Larkin Rose. Unfortunately, didn't get the opportunity. I've met Larkin Rose on a couple of occasions in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to try to interview him at Anarchapulco, but the few times I saw him when he wasn't on stage, there were a lot of people around him, and I was going to try to get him in the lobby one day. He was sitting in the lobby, and there were a lot of people around him, and I figured, well, I'll go over there when the crowd dies down a little bit. And then I looked away and looked back, and by the time I looked back, he was gone, and I didn't see him again. Let me see. I had met Mark Passio before. I met him in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when I went to see Adam Kokesh speak there back in the fall of 2016, and I actually sat at the same table with Mark Passio and talked to him for a little while. I told him about my deputism plan idea, and I talked to him about jury nullification. He said he agreed with me on both things. Anyway, I wanted to talk to him at Anarchapulco. I was going to try to get an interview with him. Unfortunately, I didn't. The only time I saw him outside of this speaker hall was at the pool party. They had a pool party Sunday night where they had like a buffet set up, and I had heard they were originally going to charge extra for the food at the pool party, but I guess they decided not to for some reason, which was cool because the trip, I ended up spending a little more money than I had intended to spend there. And anyway, they had it was like a taco buffet. And then there was a bar. Now, if you wanted to get drinks at the bar, you had to pay extra, but the taco buffet was like included in the main ticket price for Anarchapulco. Anyway, they had a pool party there, and now the funny thing about the pool party is the friend of mine that I went with, that not that many people actually swam in the pool. You're going to have a pool party, and like out of the people that were there, very few of them actually swam in the pool, which I thought was kind of lame, as did the friend of mine, because like if you're going to have a pool party, then there should be more people actually in the pool. But I got in the pool, and so anyway, I saw Mark Passio in the pool, but I didn't think that was like a good time to approach him about doing an interview. So I didn't get to interview Mark Passio. I talked to G. Edward Griffin. Now, I had met G. Edward Griffin before. I met him in California. There was this thing. I don't even know if it's still around, but it was called the Granada Forum, and it was kind of a truth seeker, I don't know, patriot type group. I don't know what you'd call it. And anyway, they used to have meetings that I went to in the San Fernando Valley years ago, and G. Edward Griffin spoke there, and then I met him again. He spoke at there was some rich person that had a house in a place called La Cañada, Flint Ridge, which is near Pasadena and Glendale, somewhere in that area. And G. Edward Griffin spoke there, and he was like, that's when he was kind of like launching this thing called Freedom Force International. And I saw him there as well. And I had bought his book, which I highly recommend, The Creature from Jekyll Island, A Second Look at the Federal Reserve System. That's probably the best book ever written on the Federal Reserve. And I highly recommend the book. And G. Edward Griffin is he's a really good writer, and he's really good at breaking things down and takes into layman's terms. And he kind of makes what a lot of people would consider to be a dry subject, and he kind of makes it kind of entertaining, his writing style. Highly recommend that book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, by A Second Look at the Federal Reserve System by G. Edward Griffin. Anyway, when I met him years ago, I got him to autograph my copy of his book. Anyway, he was in Anarchapulco, and I talked to him actually at the airport. He was actually standing in front of me at the airport. So anyway, I talked to him there, thanked him for all the work he's done over the years, got a picture taken with him. Anyway, I got to meet a lot of interesting people there. There were I think most of the people there were from the U.S. There were some Canadians there. There were some people there from Europe. I talked to people from Germany, and I talked to people from the U.K. And obviously there were some people there from Mexico. And I didn't see that many Mexicans at Anarchapulco. I mean, they were working there, obviously working the event, working at the hotel, or doing something with the event. But there were a few Mexicans there, anyway, I got to talk to a lot of interesting people. And would I go back to Anarchapulco in 2019? Yeah, I'd like to go back. I'm hoping that I'm in a good enough financial situation in 2019 to be able to go back. But assuming I am, yeah, I'm probably going to go back for 2019. I know for 2019, they're going to try to rent out the entire hotel. Where now, when we were at the hotel there for Anarchapulco 2018, there were other people that were just there for other things. There were people there on vacation or doing whatever that had nothing to do with Anarchapulco. And I would say that probably most of the people there, maybe about half the people or something, or close to half, a good number of people there, let's say, were there for Anarchapulco. But there were a lot of other people there for other stuff. Anyway, so for 2019, they are intending to rent out the entire hotel. And if they do that, I think there's going to be they'd be selling 4,000 tickets to Anarchapulco. So it'd be interesting to see if they can pull that off. Anyway, I thought of another interesting person I met there who I also interviewed, and that's Eric July from the band Backwards. And Eric July, really great guy, awesome guy, very cool guy. Really enjoyed talking to him, and I wish I could have been able to interview him longer. Unfortunately, we got interrupted. He was doing something else, so I had to cut the interview short. But I would have liked to have talked to him longer. And if you're not familiar with Backwards, that's his band. I would describe them kind of as I said in the interview, kind of a rap metal band. And Anyway, and then they combine that with a lot of his lyrics are very pro-liberty, very strong, libertarian or anarcho-capitalist type of lyrics, and if you're into that kind of music, I think the music's very good. If you like that type of music, maybe it's not going to appeal to everybody, but if you like kind of a rap metal, check out Backwards, BACKWORDZ. But anyway, Eric July, really cool guy. I also got to meet Josh Sigerson, World Alternative Media, and he actually has a thing where I guess if you order a ticket and use their promo code, you can get a discount on your Anarchapulco tickets, which is what I did, and so I was able to get my tickets at a slightly discounted rate, which was cool. Also briefly spoke to Luke Rudkowski, We Are Change. I had met Luke Rudkowski at, and I've been following We Are Change for a long time, and I think they've done a lot of really cool stuff over the years. And anyway, I met Luke Rudkowski he was at the Libertarian National Convention in Orlando in 2016. And now he was not there as a delegate; he was just there as a reporter covering the convention. And I don't know that I don't even know if he remembers meeting me there, and I'm sure he meets a lot of people. But I had told him at the convention that because that was like the first time he'd ever been to a Libertarian National Convention, and I thought that was kind of a bad one to go to. Not that it was actually a pretty cool convention. I mean, it was kind of fun. It was probably the most fun Libertarian Party convention that I had been to, but the outcome of the convention with Gary Johnson and Bill Weld winning the nomination certainly wasn't good. I don't think Gary Johnson or Bill Weld are legitimate libertarians, and I think the Libertarian Party was kind of hijacked and sabotaged into being a controlled opposition, and that I think, and that's another thing. I will say that the crowd that was at Anarchapulco, and I told this to Eric July when I was talking about him because the subject of the Libertarian Party came up in conversation, that the crowd that was at Anarchapulco, on average, was more libertarian than the crowd has been at the last 3 Libertarian Party presidential nominating conventions. I would say the crowd was more hardcore libertarian at Anarchapulco. And that if you had took the crowd that was at the 2016 Libertarian National Convention in Orlando and you replaced them with the crowd that was in Acapulco, I think that the presidential and vice presidential nominations would have been different. Somebody else other than Bill Weld or Gary Johnson and Bill Weld would have been nominated. But I'll probably make some videos about that in the future. But anyway, Anarchapulco was a pretty cool event. It was pretty interesting. Now, here's another thing. I didn't get to see as much of Acapulco as I would like to have seen. I didn't really leave the hotel that much. And I really wanted to go see the cliff diving in Acapulco. There's some place where these guys jump off cliffs. It's a famous thing. I mean, I'd heard about it years ago, the world famous cliff divers of Acapulco. And I had an opportunity to do that the last day I was there. My flight went out pretty late in the day, and I didn't leave until I think it was 7 p.m. And so, which was kind of cool because that means I didn't have to get up and rush off to the airport. Now, the person that I was rimming with there, they had an earlier flight, and so they had to leave in the morning, but I got to hang out all day. And so, I got to hang around the motel for a while, the hotel room for a while, and then I ended up taking my bags down, and I checked them at the front desk, and then, I went swimming in the ocean. Actually, I came back to the room, took a shower, then I took my bags down, and then, anyway, then I thought, hey, this would be a good time to go check out the cliff diving, and it turned out that they did a cliff diving show at noon, and then the next one wasn't until 4:30 or 5 o'clock or something like that. And I found out that it was a lot further from the hotel than I had realized. I didn't realize it was something like a 40 or 45 minute drive by a cab from the hotel. And so by the time I realized that, and I realized that the next cliff diving show, they've also got a restaurant there. Apparently you could eat at this restaurant while watching the cliff diving. And anyway, it was too far from the hotel, and so anyway, I didn't get to do that. So I was kind of disappointed about that. Obviously, I got to see some of Acapulco. I flew over it and then landed at the airport, and then when I rode a cab from the airport to the hotel, I got to see some of the town. And then obviously I rode back, took a cab back to the airport, after my week was over, and got to see, some stuff on my way back. But other than that, I was just mostly at the hotel. And then the only thing I did outside the hotel was there was maybe 2 or 3 times that I walked to where the shopping center was that had the Walmart and the mall. And then the other side of the street, there was some other grocery store and a mall. I ended up getting some pesos there when I was at the front desk because I got tired of using my credit card and then trying to pay people in U.S. dollars and then not knowing what the exchange rate was and all that stuff. So I ended up getting some pesos, and so that was like the first time in my life that I spent pesos. So I've gotten pesos and change, in the U.S. or I've found pesos on the ground, but I've never actually been in a place where I used pesos. So, now here's another thing. I wanted to get a book, like one of those, books that teaches you how to speak Spanish, and I was going to have one of those books and carry it around with me while I was there. And like I said, I know a little bit of Spanish, ¿Dónde está la zapatería? It's where's the shoe store. ¿Dónde está la playa? Where's the beach? Me gusta la playa. I love the beach. ¿Dónde está las chicas? Where are the chicks? Or cerveza, beer, I know, tacos, nachos, burrito. So anyway, muy pequeño español. So I know a little bit of Spanish, but obviously I'm far from being fluent. So I thought that I should have a book with me. So if I was, I could open it up and, maybe converse with people a little bit better. There was like a sandwich shop type place in the hotel that had Starbucks coffee. And there was a time where I was in there where I went up to the register to pay, and I was trying to tell the person at the register what I had, and I was like, uno, dos, tres, cuatro espresso shots. I didn't know how to say shot, or how to say espresso. I don't know if there is. I think it's just called espresso, no matter what country you're in. But anyway, I was like cuatro espresso shots. But anyway, I'd like to get a Spanish language. I always thought that, if you go into another country, you should at least try to communicate with the locals in, whatever their native language is. Now, if I was in some other country, if I went to, say, Russia or China or something, or India, I'd really be in trouble because I really don't. I don't know if I know anything in Indian, and I know very little Russian. Vodka, not too much else. If I was in Japan, I guess I know a little bit of Japanese. Ichiban, number one. But anyway, I did. Americans are pretty notorious for not being able to speak other languages, and really, English is one of the most commonly spoken. It might even be the most commonly spoken language in the world, but certainly if it's not the most commonly spoken language, it's one of the most commonly spoken languages, and it's also the international language of business. And Spanish is also a widely spoken language. If you know English and you know Spanish, you can get by in a heck of a lot of the world, because the English were great, seafaring people, as were the Spanish, and so they went around the world. And anyway, I would like to have. I wanted to get a Spanish language book to bring with me, and unfortunately I didn't do that. If I go back, I'll do it next time. One of the things that happened to me was I actually got sick. I don't get sick very often. I rarely get sick, but just one of the few times I got sick, I actually got sick before the trip. So I had just a bunch of things that went wrong, and then I lost money, and my passport got delayed, and then I get sick. And so that almost, fortunately, by the time I got on the plane and everything, I was feeling better. So I was not sick while I was there, but I was sick a few days prior to being there, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't go through with my plan of getting one of those Spanish language books, is because I was sick, and in fact I was running low on clothing, short pants and swimming trunks and some other things, and I had to run to the store the day before my flight left, feeling really lousy. And anyway, so if I go back, I'm going to try to be a little bit more prepared to speak some Espanol with the locals there. Anyway, and I would like to see more of the city. Now, I've heard Acapulco has a reputation for having a lot of crime. I didn't see any of that when I was there, but there were guys outside, guarding the hotel with machine guns. And there was across the street from the hotel, there was a golf course. And as you're walking down this street to get to where the Walmart and the mall was, there was like a guard shack there, and there was a guy standing there with a machine gun. And anyway, I guess they want to protect the tourist areas, because if people don't go to Acapulco, then they'll lose a lot of money, because I'm sure they make a lot of their economy in Acapulco is probably based on tourism. Now, I know back in the 1960s or 1950s or 1940s or something, a lot of wealthy Americans and people who were celebrities at the time would vacation in Acapulco. But I've heard that, I don't know, sometime over the last maybe 20 years or so, that a lot of Americans don't go there anymore. And apparently the Mexican government tries to steer the Americans to go to Cancun or to go to Cabo San Lucas. A lot of Americans that are from east of the Mississippi go to Cancun, and a lot of Americans apparently that are from west of the Mississippi go to Cabo San Lucas, which are also places I'd really like to go. I'd like to go. There's a lot more traveling I'd like to do. Anyway, apparently in Acapulco, a lot of Mexicans go there for vacation, as well as a lot of people from other parts of Central America and South America. That's a favorite vacation spot for them. Now, as far as crime, Jeff Berwick kind of jokes about it, and he says that the crime is exaggerated, that Acapulco is not as dangerous as some people make it out to be. Now, it's kind of funny, because when I got back to the U.S., I went online and I read some kind of crime thing, don't go to Acapulco, it's really dangerous, one of the most dangerous cities in the world. It could be that there are parts of Acapulco that are dangerous, but the tourist area, really didn't seem very dangerous to me. But again, there was one night where it was the first night I was there, when I went over to the Walmart, and I bought a bunch of bottled waters, and I had something to eat at that diner that kind of looked like a Denny's, but it wasn't Denny's. I wanted to do a little bit of exploring, so I kind of walked down the street there for a few blocks, and I was getting a little bit nervous, just because I haven't been in other countries very often, particularly one where people don't speak English. In fact, that's the only time I was in another country where people don't speak English. Now, years ago, I went to Puerto Rico, and Spanish is widely spoken in Puerto Rico, but there's a lot of people in Puerto Rico that speak English as well. And Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. I mean, it's actually part of the U.S. It's not a state, but it is a U.S. territory. And so this was the first time I was ever walking around in another country where people, where English was not the official language. So anyway, I walked a few blocks, and then it was kind of funny, because I ended up getting back to the hotel late, and the person that I was rooming with got to the hotel later than me, and I had checked in before they got there. But anyway, they were wondering what the hell happened to me, and they thought like I'd been kidnapped or something. And anyway, I ended up running, when I was walking back to the hotel, I ended up running into some other Anarchapulco people, and we got into a conversation on the way back to the hotel, and we were talking about cryptocurrency, and ended up going into the lobby, and we were hanging out by the bar, and we were talking about cryptocurrency for a long time. And anyway, this friend of mine was up in the room, and I did actually hear the phone ring, but I was kind of so engrossed in the conversation that I didn't bother to answer it. And by the way, my cell phone actually worked in Mexico, which surprised me. I didn't know if American cell phones worked in Mexico, but apparently they do, or at least mine did. So anyway, I ended up going back to the hotel room, and he's like, "Hey man, what happened to you? I thought you were kidnapped or something," because there's stories of people getting kidnapped and held for ransom in Acapulco, but no, I wasn't kidnapped, and nothing bad happened to me. Now, I was talking to, when I was at the airport, I was talking to another person who was at Anarchapulco, and they were telling me that they went to some bar or some nightclub there, and, there was at one point where they got kind of nervous because there were some thuggish type local people that were there. But I never saw any of that, I never saw, it was just regular, just kind of like the regular Mexican type people, kind of just like regular Americans that you would see at a mall in the U.S. So I didn't have any problems there. But again, so if I go back to Acapulco, I would like to see some more of the city. If I go back, I'd actually like to stay there for a couple weeks next time. Speaking of which, there was an event that was held a few days after Anarchapulco was over, called Anarcho-Capitalist, which was started. I don't know who started it. I know Larkin Rose was promoting it. I don't know if he started it, or I don't know who started it. But anyway, they rented out some space at some other hotel somewhere in the area, and the fork is kind of a play on cryptocurrency, where sometimes they'll take one cryptocurrency and then it will fork into another cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash or something. So anyway, they called it Anarcho-Capitalist, and it was something that was held, I think it started maybe 2 or 3 days after Anarchapulco ended, and then I think they had this Anarcho-Capitalist thing, maybe it was like a 3-day event or something like that. And it was supposed to be that basically just people would get together and there was no plan, and that they would just figure out what they would do after they got together. I have no idea how it went. I would have liked to have stayed longer just so I could have, done some more sightseeing and seen, more of the city, and gone to the beach more. I mean, I wanted to rent a surfboard. I wanted to rent a jet ski, and so I would have liked to have just stayed more for that reason. I mean, it was cool having a lot of really interesting speakers there, but it was almost kind of overwhelming that there were so many good speakers. Now, everybody has different taste, and some of the speakers were less interesting than others that were there, but even so, there were still a good number of speakers there that I thought were interesting, and there were a few that I really wanted to see and actually ended up missing. Yeah, it was kind of overwhelming, the number of speakers they had, and if you're into this stuff, like I am and been following this stuff for a long time, and, I didn't know who all the speakers were, but I knew who most of them were, and so it was just hard to get to do everything you wanted to do. It was almost like there were so many things to do that you didn't get time to do it all. So if I go back, assuming I can afford to go back, and if I can afford to stay for 2 weeks, I'd actually like to stay for 2 weeks next time. Now, if I stay there for 2 weeks, I guess depends upon what my financial situation is, but I might stay at the Anarchapulco Hotel the first week, and then maybe the second week I'll move to some other hotel, because there are cheaper hotels there. Now, they had a group rate discount at the hotel, and which was cool. And it came out to, geez, where did it come out to? It was like $100 a night or something like that. Maybe a little over 100 a night. Might have been like $120 a night or something. But it was a nice hotel. I mean, for a nice hotel on the beach, that was a really good price. I mean, like I said, if you were paying, you'd have a hard time finding a place like this in the USA for that low of a price. But anyway, assuming I'm able to make it back to Anarchapulco next year, and they raised the ticket prices to Anarchapulco, which I'm not real happy about that. I mean, I guess they have a right to raise the ticket prices. I think if they make it too expensive, that they could end up, pricing some people out of it. And I think the goal ought to be to, get as many people who are freedom-oriented people, as possible to be able to go. But anyway, they raised the ticket prices a little bit, I guess in part because next time they want to rent out the entire hotel. And in order to do that, they need to, I guess they need to pay a bunch of money up front or something like that. So anyway, they raised their ticket prices. It was, for the main conference, it was $245. They raised it to $395. Now, you could go there and just kind of like hang out in the lobby and stuff and just not go to any of the events and I guess not pay the ticket price. But I guess you could try to sneak in, but that would be kind of a crappy thing to do and certainly wouldn't be in line with libertarian principles. And if you got caught sneaking in, then it would certainly be justifiable for them to throw you out. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. If you want to go there and just hang out and not go to anything, then okay, don't buy a ticket. But if you want to go there and you want to go to any of the stuff, then buy a ticket, or don't go. Don't sneak in. That's not cool. But anyway, another thing was I wanted to see, they had like a music night where they had like Backwards was playing and they had some other bands were playing, and I thought that was going to be held at the hotel, and I didn't find out until after it was over that it was actually held at some like bar or nightclub somewhere in Acapulco. So I would have gone to that, but I didn't find out about it until it was over, and I had thought that I'd been under the impression that it was going to be held at the hotel, but it was not held at the hotel. So anyway, it was pretty cool. Got to meet some interesting people. Got to see a part of the world that I hadn't seen before. And it was also nice getting to be in some really nice weather. The first day I was there was actually pretty hot, to the point of kind of being somewhat uncomfortable. Not super uncomfortable, but somewhat uncomfortable. But then it cooled off and was nice. It was very nice. The weather was really beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful after that. And I do a lot of traveling around the country. And sometimes I'm in places in the U.S. I'm talking about, and sometimes I'm in places where the weather's really nice, and then other times I'm in places where the weather's not so nice. So prior to, I was actually in the Northeast, and the weather was pretty cold before I went to Anarchapulco, and so it felt really nice to get out of the cold weather and be able to go to the beach and swimming in the ocean and all that stuff in February. So anyway, in closing here, I'd like to say, it's a cool thing to do if you can afford it. And I don't know if I'll go to every Anarchapulco. Depends on what I'm doing, but I am going to try to go next year. So anyway, until next time.